शुभं करोति कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः आत्मबुद्धिप्रकाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तु ते। दीपात्वं देहि कल्याणं देहि सर्वान् मनोरथान् यावत् कर्म समाप्येत तावत् त्वं सुस्थिरो भव।
श्री रविशंकर प्रसाद जी, डॉक्टर सुब्रमण्यम स्वामी जी, प्रोफेसर नागा स्वामी जी, श्री राजीव मल्होत्रा जी, and Professor R. Vaidyanathan. Thank you, sir. May I now invite Shri Rajiv Malhotra to present his welcome address.
Namaste. It is indeed an honor to do our first event jointly with IGNCA. Infinity Foundation India is actually less than a year old, and we did our first major conference in IIT Madras some months ago. This is the second one. There'll be two more this year. I just want to limit my remarks to a few observations about why we are doing this and what is distinct from there are a whole lot of conferences, sammelans, manthans, conclaves, literary festivals going on in India. In fact, someone told me there's about 250 a year, so almost every day you could go to a different one. And on this subject, these kind of topics. So why need for another one? It has to be something serious, and it has to be a gap that we want to fill. Otherwise, we wouldn't put so much effort and do this. So what we decided is that these conferences are to present research. So the conference is not an event by itself where people come and just talk, but it is to present research that the person has been doing for a very long time. And this research has to be commissioned by us for a particular topic. So there's a problem we identify, and we want targeted responses to that particular problem and not whatever is in the mind of that person. And this has to be original research. It has to hit a blow to that problem, a game-changing piece of work, and something which hasn't been done before. So those are important criteria. So in the field of Indology and India studies, we have identified that in the last 70 years, there have been 5 waves, wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves of thought that we need to rebuttal, that we need to give responses to. So we've picked the 5th wave, which we call Neo-Orientalism. Many of you know what we've talked about, what that means. And so this is a very focused, targeted response to a particular school of thought, which is having a devastating effect on India studies. So it is not a general gathering of smart people who will each come and say something. And nor is it emotional or recycling earlier works, but people addressing certain themes. So we have identified 10 themes within this Neo-Orientalism school and invited papers. A panel of judges, blind peer review. So the people submitting papers don't know who the reviewers are, and the reviewers don't know who writers are. Evaluate, and based on that, the best papers are selected. Now, some observations on what we found. unlike in other countries where we've done this, I found that in India, senior scholars, established scholars, just sort of assume that they just get in and speak. But we wanted it to be totally merit-based, and therefore encourage a lot of young scholars, new scholars to get in. And this meant some of the senior scholars had to be told no, because the paper was not original. Either it's just rambling, or it is the same old thing we've heard many times, or not on the topic, or they just haven't read the problem, which may require reading hundreds of pages of some opponent's work before responding. They're just giving opinions. And this is not, we want to create a new standard, a new type of research. So the idea is not having gatherings and events. The idea is to organize solid research. So in this, in the first conference, we've already produced a 400-page book, which we haven't published. It will be published soon. As a result of this conference also, the best papers will be selected and published in a proper way, serious way, and given a lot of promotion. And we also commissioned 2 monographs which are ready for discussion in this event. 2 monographs, serious pieces of work, each targeting a very important problem which has not been written about by our people before. A very important discussion. So we are focusing on what's new, what will have high impact, what's targeted to a given opponent, and not scattered and general discussions. Now, there are a lot of tutorial-based events where people are giving tutorials on something, or opinion-based events, and that is not what this conference series is. We are planning another conference this year on taking back Tamil Nadu from the Dravidians. And this will be new archaeological research, a new game. We have Professor Nagaswamy here. We have Dr. Swamy here. We have many others. We bring together the best of the best and take it on. So the idea is to just finish off. It is not just one more like talking, but have definitive, conclusive work so strong that this becomes a reference book for the next generation, or anybody in the world who want to talk about the subject. This has definitive data. That's the kind of thing. We also want to do another one on Agama Shastra, because so much is done on other texts, but Agamas are sort of disorganized and not taken so seriously. We are discussing next year some conference ideas. One of them is on Vedic environmental ideas for Vedic, and so on. There's a lot of discussions for 2018. So each one, we identify promising scholars whose proposal is promising and good. We really encourage them. They got to spend up to a year preparing for what they will present. So it is serious work. Now I would like to say that since a few months I've been going to HRD ministry and culture ministry and various places, and there are a lot of, there's an alphabet soup of organizations which have R, the letter R in them. R supposedly stands for research. There is ICHR, which is Indian Council of Historical Research, ICPR, Indian Council of Philosophical Research, ICCR, which is in the External Affairs Ministry, Indian Council of Cultural Research, ICSSR, which is Indian Council of Social Sciences Research, and so on. But if you really apply the criteria of research, that it has to be original, it has to be path-breaking, it has to be evidence-based, then only a certain % of the actual work presented is qualified. I would qualify it as research. And a good proof of what I'm saying is, you do not have the world-class journals on India studies being published out of India. They're not. And you do not have the best universities where the brightest students want to go for their doctorates here. They want to go somewhere else. You don't have computer searchable Indian texts, classical Indian texts, but you have biblical searchable, you have Islamic searchables, not only the original text, but also commentaries, interpretations. If I want to do a piece of work on, say, Jati, and I want to know what was written about it in all the texts, there's no place I can go search and get all the stuff out on that. Basic things like that. Dictionaries, Sanskrit, English dictionaries, the most prominent ones are from somewhere else. So we don't even have the tools of research, state of the art, under our control. So this is so we want to do what is heavy hitting, large scale projects, multi-year, which involve a large number of scholars to work together to produce a big impact. That's the difference from, say, another event somewhere. So I will, there's a lot I could say on this, but I think I'll turn over to the speakers here, the eminent speakers. We have three days. We have 3 days of events, parallel 3 tracks. Some things that have never been done before. Another one of the things never done before is we'll have a debate between a top Western scholar that somebody is going to role play. I don't know who, but somebody will role play because we invited him and he didn't want to come. And the traditional Indian response with an interpreter who will translate from English to Sanskrit and Sanskrit to English. And this is to showcase that the real response comes from our people in their own terms, in their own language. And it is not people who've gone to some Oxford or some place like that, or Columbia and studied under those guys that are going to be representing us. Our home team is our home team. It is not something that somebody else has allocated or nominated for us. So with that, I will stop and thank all of you for coming, and I'm sure we'll have an exciting 3 days. Thank you.
Respected Mr. Rajiv Malhotra, Dr. Subramanian Swamy, Professor Vaidyanathan, Mr. Nagaswamy, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the heat of campaign. And I came yesterday night only to be here, and I have to catch a flight at 10:30. Because this program, when Ram Bahadurji asked me to be here, I could not say no to him for a variety of reasons. He has been my guru in Vidyarthi Parishad. But more important was to meet and give my regard to Mr. Malhotra for the kind of work he's doing globally in the quest of India's heritage, and my regards to him and all those eminent people who are present here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the very fact that a research-based interaction is happening in Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts in quest of right perception about India's global heritage is a very great mission statement of the changing time we are in. Mr. Malhotra spoke very frankly. All of you would have been persona non grata here, but for the change in the political ecosystem of the country. I think this particular topic is quite well-founded. Why I say so? On the one hand is the richness of our heritage, intellectually profound, extraordinary. And on the other hand, we have biases. Somehow or other trying to downplay the extraordinary contribution. And when I read the writings of Sri Rajiv Malhotra, one of the most important issue he touched, which I was deeply impressed, on he having provoked a debate in the world, do you tolerate a counter-religion or you give mutual respect? I think that was a very important issue he touched, and Sri Malhotra, I wish to compliment you. And what is indeed very extraordinary, ladies and gentlemen, that all the eminent people of other religions he encountered with were reluctant to give a clear answer. And what is our path? Our path is what is there in Rigveda. Ekama sada vipra bahuda vadante. Truth is one. Wise men interpret it differently. You have your own perception of truth. I have my own. You follow your own path, I will follow my own. You respect my path, I will respect your path. Because in the ultimate analysis, your path and my path merges at the same destination wherein lies the ultimate truth. Eternal, permanent, irrevocable, what we'll call Sanatana. This has been the basic ideas which has been not only permeating but inspiring all our heritage. And therefore, as a student of India's constitution, this issue has always baffled me. Why our founding fathers, and they were great people, very great foresight, did not think it proper to make India a secular country, or did not think it proper to incorporate that in the constitution by way of a representation. They knew India's heritage is secular. If we call secular in the other sense, our is every ideas do come, mingle, respect. The other issue I would like to highlight is, we talk of expression. The other is experience and expression. And experience has been component of India's heritage. And therefore, what is your experience? What is my experience? A dialogue has always ensured. A questioning has always ensured. I am not well versed, but whatever little I know, this whole Bhagavad Gita is what? Questioning by Arjuna about his problems, about his concerns, and answered by Lord Krishna. Therefore, the greatest text India has produced, one of the greatest texts, Bhagavad Gita, is what? Based upon questioning. This whole Advaitvad, dualism, non-dualism is what? Again, the spirit of inquiry. Why this extraordinary tradition was supplanted, I feel was a very extraordinary reason. Mr. Malhotra, there is a need for greater research on this issue. A judge of Calcutta High Court, who was a great Indologist, was interacting with a lot of Brahmins in the early part of 19th century. And when the interaction went on, he found they were profoundly intelligent, intellectual, knew more than us. And he started sending reports to London, extolling their intellectual virtues. And he was snubbed from London. What the hell are you doing? If you will emphasize upon their great intellectual strength, we shall lose the rationale to govern them. You have to portray them as people bereft of any intellect. Those conspiracies are required to be exposed more and more. And therefore, when Ramakrishna Paramahansa identified Vivekananda, I always said, ye Shraddha aur Buddhi ka milan tha. It was the meeting of the dedication with intellect. And the biggest thing which Vivekananda, in my very considerate view, did was to lift the morale of Indians who felt that we had nothing to offer in the real world. Therefore, they used to go in the unreal world. And then he said, please worship only Bharat Mata as the only goddess. I am very happy that profound research is going to come. It has to be authentic, it has to be original. One last issue today I would like to flag. Should we presume that our leaders were completely ignorant or indifferent to the heritage of India? If you read their writings, they used to discover the problem right, but on solution they used to miss out. And here I would like to show you something. Maybe many of you will be knowing it. When the Indian Constitution was being framed, when it was finalized, a debate occurred. Should we present it just like a book? Because India was getting free after hundreds and thousands of years in many ways. Or should we incorporate the heritage of India? This debate went on. And ultimately, Nandlal Bose, the famous painter from Bengal, was commissioned to fill in the pages of original constitution. with ideas which they themselves conveyed. And in the year 2000, when I became MP for the first time, we had 50 years of our independence, Constitution. And we were given the original copy of that Constitution. And I would request all of eminent people present here and in the audience to have a copy of this. I would like to show a few pages of that. Saurabh, please bring it here. Because I think this is going to be a very important issue which you may debate. This is the original Constitution, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to show something about it. And the first is on the citizenship, and the sketch is the Vedic life in India. Above the citizenship, the first is the Vedic life in India. And then came the fundamental right. Please open it. This is the fundamental right before that, the directive principles. I'll just show it. Give me one time. India is a big country. The original constitution was also big. The fundamental right chapter. And what is the sketch? Lord Ram returning to Ayodhya from Sri Lanka with Sita and Lakshman. That is the second one. Then you have the directive principle of state policy. And the sketch is Lord Krishna Upadesh about Gita in Mahabharata. Natraj Nikal. Mr. Malhotra, you are talking about Tamil Nadu. On finance, property, contract and suites is the image of Lord Nataraja. Okay, that is there. You have Rani Jhansi, you have Maharana Pratap, you have Kabir Das, you have Mahatma Gandhi, you have Subhash Chandra Bose, you have Akbar, but not Aurangzeb. Remember it. That's very important to be appreciated. And then last, Saurabh, please show me the last page. I would like to show the signature of all the leaders there. The last page. This is the signature of all the leaders, including Rajendra Prasad, the chairman, Sardar Patel, Maulana Azad, Dr. Ambedkar, Nehru ji, and all the members are here. Today, the reason as to why I am showing this document to you, ladies and gentlemen, and Constitution of India is the main basis of our governance. Many of the friends of the left talk of, I believe in constitutional nationalism. Okay, good, okay. Have you seen the spirit of India's original constitution, what it talks about? But the reason as to why I showed it today is, if at all, hypothetically speaking, the constitution was to be framed today, and if the Constituent Assembly decides to have the same sketches in the Constitution today, will it be allowed? Or there will be a debate? And there will be a lot of editorials, and there will be a lot of pamphlets. India going communal. I think that is the level to which our heritage has been almost, I would say, hijacked by people who enjoyed state power, came with collusive research designed to weaken the morale of India, which began in 1942, where the imperial war overnight became the people's war in the wake of Second World War. You know it very well. And that research still continues. In that larger ecosystem, I'm very happy that today Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts with Infinity Foundation is undertaking this extraordinary 3 days interaction, focus, research, logic, evidence, empirical evidence. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you very honestly, I am not at all a Gyani at all. But while arguing the Ram Janmabhoomi case in the Allahabad High Court, where I was the lawyer for Hindus and Ram Lalla, which we won, and I'm sure we will win in Supreme Court also, I went deeper into the whole philosophical and spiritual heritage of India. And I found that we have answer to everything. Everything of the world, the problem even of today, there is an answer available. And Mr. Rajiv Malhotra, the most happiest aspect of this interaction is a focused research on Sanskrit, the great language, scientific. As an IT minister, many of the original thinkers tell me how computer savvy is Sanskrit. And mind you, thousands and thousands of years old. The mantras of India's heritage, their scientific value. The Onkara and still being so relevant, and what is the philosophical, spiritual, and even health, nourishing value of those mantras. The research has to be very focused. And I'm indeed very happy that this initiative has been taken. I would have loved to leave my ministership and campaign both to remain as a listener for 3 days to get some jnana. I only hope that the publications, I will be able to get through them, and surely the country will be enriched and this whole debate would come into a more constructive way. One last suggestion. Dr. Swami is more forthright and blunt in many ways. But we also keep on taking them on television media, intellectually, in seminars. When you confront them with logic, they run away quickly. And this I would give you a very specific example. It is hilarious also. In Dr. Manmohan Singh government, NCRT book was published. And as it is, leftist slant by leftist thinkers, patronized by the then government, given big doles. Now when I went through it, it was meant for standard 7, 8th and 9th. Bhagat Singh was a terrorist revolutionary. Jats were looters and terrorists, blah, blah, blah. So was Subhash Chandra Bose, so was Ras Bihari Bose. And there was a poetry by a very Maoist type of a poet. And I'm sorry to say so, but I had to say it in the parliament. And I said, don't expunge it. If something is being taught for students of 7th, 8th and 9th, you'll have to take it on board in the parliament proceeding also. रामनामी चादर ओढ़ने और रंडी के कोठे पर जाना एक समान है. That was the essence of that poem. I'm sorry for being, but I have to say so. I took up the matter. Our Vidya Bharati people had come. And Mr. Arjun Singh, the great Arjun Singh, late Arjun Singh, was the HRD minister, trying to defend it. And ultimately, it became a big issue. And the entire house was stunned. But the most notable part was the great leftist members of parliament also rose up to say, we don't support it. Then I looked at them, come on, all are your flag bearers, all are your comrade in arms. But once they were confronted and saw the revulsion of the people of India, they backed out. They will keep on backing out at every point if you confront them with fact and logic. And we have enough of that available. In that larger concept, I wish to congratulate the organizers and all the eminent people, Mr. Rajiv Malhotra in particular. I have great personal regard for you after going through your writings. Keep your pen as sharp as it is. India is always awaiting for that brightened, sparkling knowledge of you and your associate. And I'm sure the papers will come about, will be a milestone. Thank you, namaskar, greetings. And may I have you, with due apologies, your permission to leave. Namaste.
Mr. Chairman, Rajiv Malhotra, Professor Vaidyanathan, General Bakshi, Dr. Nagaswamy, and Member Secretary of this great organization, which needs a truncation in name. It should be just called the Center for National Arts. The theme today is global perceptions arising out of the second Swadeshi Indology campaign, I would say. I'm privileged to know Rajiv Malhotra. I know whatever sacrifice he made of his career in telecom to devote his attention to this. I call him a revolutionary because he is able to smash the Western scholars in their own idiom. You can always insulate yourself from Western scholars and say, let them go to hell. That won't solve our problem. What we need is the ability to know what the argument so far has been and the footnoting that is done to support that argument, and then take it apart in the same idiom and logic that they use in their academics. So if you are to train people, scholars, you must do it that way. I think it's very difficult to clone Rajiv Malhotra, but we need many Rajiv Malhotras. I would say that this Swadeshi ideology or Indology has come through several phases already. Mahatma Gandhi popularized the word. He essentially meant Swaraj. Then Deen Dayal Upadhyay contributed to the Swadeshi economics, which has not been yet fully developed because he didn't live long enough. He was assassinated. And his successors have not yet devoted energy and time that it deserves. And now we have this new field of Swadeshi Indology. I would say that Swadeshi Indology has 5 dimensions. One is the defining of our identity. All countries which have progressed substantially in the last 200 years have devoted a lot of energy and attention to Swadeshi, to their identity. Samuel Huntington, a professor at Harvard, wrote a book, Who We Are, or Who Are We? And there he defines an American as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant English-speaking citizen. Now, when it was pointed out to him that there are a lot of non-whites, or non-Christians, or non-Protestants, he said, yes, they are all citizens of the United States. But the concept of American is the original concept for which it was created. And that is what he said is the white Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, Christian, English-speaking American. The British Prime Minister about 2 years ago had defined the identity of Britain as a Christian. And when it was pointed out to him there are a large number of other religions also, he said, yes, they are all citizens. But the identity of an Englishman is that he is a Christian. And you can see across a large number of countries, you go to China, they say our identity is Han, even though there have been Mongols and there have been other kinds of people also in China. So what is our identity? And I, not being in this field, but as a person who has been forcibly interfering in it because of the atrocities committed by Western scholars, I have defined our identity as a Hindu or someone whose ancestors are Hindus. That doesn't disparage anybody who becomes an Indian citizen, but the flow of our civilization is essentially at the core Hindu. And there have been others who have contributed here and there to shape our culture. But like the Ganga, which flows with a lot of little rivers joining in, the name Ganga doesn't change. It is known as Ganga. And the same way, the culture, which I say is not only of Hindus, but those who are willing to acknowledge that their ancestors are Hindus, they together form the identity of our country. And modern genetic science through DNA has shown that our DNA is more or less the same all over the country, whether it's Hindu or Muslim, or it's Brahmin or scheduled caste. And so this explodes the division of our identity into Dravidian and Aryan as being nothing to do. The Aryan word, of course, doesn't exist. Only Arya exists. Arya just means a civilized person. And Dravida is a sandhi of two words, essentially meaning South India, which Adi Shankara invented when he debated Mandana Mishra. So therefore, this British attempt to divide our country into two societies, two nations, that of course has to be now completely eliminated from our Indology. We need to know that if you really study Ramayana and Mahabharata as historical texts, it defines repeatedly that we are one country. When Mahabharata war took place, kings from all over India came. Recently I was in the palace of the Travancore Rajas in Trivandrum, and they pointed out to me that the Maharaja of Travancore actually participated in the Mahabharata war. In fact, all kings participated. But in his case, it was unique because when he reached Kurukshetra, he found that essentially it was a fight between two families. He said, I cannot participate in that, so I'll cook for both sides. So he set up tents in both camps and served them food. As you know, our system of fighting was you start the fight when the sun rises and you go back to your tent and sleep when the sun sets. And so the participation was total. And that's what Chanakya had said about Janapadas, uniting at times of crises. And in fact, Chanakya himself with Chandragupta, the correct history shows he went all the way to the western borders to fight the invaders. So this identity needs to be developed based on our texts. They may have poo-pooed our texts, but they have ultimately the structure of even British historians of India is Puranas. How do you know that Ashoka was the son of Bindusara? The only record is that of the Puranas. So the Puranas are accepted. So this is number one. The second is, much of our history can be reconstructed without controversy by just relying on foreigners who came to our country before we were invaded. Harvard University celebrated its tricentennial year in 1936, invited scholars from all over the world. And from China, they invited the president of Beijing, Dr. Hu Shi. And he was a great poet also, and a great scholar of history. And they asked him to give an address on any topic that he felt was of importance to China. And he titled his subject, which today, if you go to the Widener Library at Harvard, you can take out the tricentennial volumes and you can see his speech. He titled his speech as "The Indianization of China, a Case of 300 Years of Cultural Borrowing, Peaceful Cultural Borrowing." And he says, without firing a single bullet, the Hindus came from India and transformed the way the Chinese began to think. Hardly anybody knows about this. If I ask any history student, I have not found, I mean, maybe occasionally I found one or two seeing that they saw it, a reference to it in Panikar's book. But by and large, it's not part of our reading. It should be part of our reading material. What Farsian said after 11 years of touring India, what Bodhidharma, who left from Kanchipuram and went to Shaolin and invented what is now known to us from the Japanese as karate, all these have not been formed a part of our narrative. And the key word that Rajiv Malhotra uses is the narrative must be ours, but the battlefield is in the West. But we must first get our narrative right, and that is the other thing. Same thing with our military history. Our Bakshi is here, General Bakshi, is a fund of knowledge. It's a fact, I mean, I won't go into the details of it, but every other country which Islam invaded and took over, it took them just 2 decades to convert the entire local population to 100% Muslim. Iran, Mesopotamia, Babylon, Egypt, all the civilizations were destroyed and they converted the local population to 100% Islam. Even the Christians in Europe took 50 years, but they converted them to 100% Christian. But here, 800 years of Islamic rule, 200 years of Christian rule, and you're still 80% Hindu. That itself is a big miracle that has to be understood. But that phenomenon must be explained. Every part of India was in a rebellion. It was never accepted. They fought. I can understand the emotions of people when they see some film made on Padmini or on Jodha Bhai and so on. Because that's a total distortion of our history. It changes the perception. So this is another area which needs to be done. The correct history of our science and technology, for which I think you have some 14 volumes. Needham did it and made us all think that Chinese invented everything. But the Chinese say that the Indians taught us, only that we don't read that part. So his science technology, calculus was sent by Bhaskaracharya to Leibniz. Leibniz then sent it to Newton for recognition. Newton copied it and passed it off as his own. And the battle was remaining whether it's Leibniz or whether it's Newton. But factually correct it is that it was Bhaskaracharya. Calculus was invented here. You read George Gamau's book, the great writer on rocket science in America. He says it is the Hindus who invented rocketry, rocket propulsion. But our people don't know that. They sometimes laugh at this pushpak and this imagination that we had an aeroplane. But I came across a reference, which I tried to get the original, I have not got it, called Vimana Shastra. And somebody who had read it or part of it, I asked him what was the fuel that the Vimana was using. And he said, mercury. Then I asked scientists, is it possible mercury can ever be a fuel for transportation? He said, well, so far we have not succeeded. But we all know in science, especially aeronautical sciences, that a drop of mercury produces more than 10 barrels of oil in terms of airline fuel. So in fact, he says in the long run, maybe he said 100 years from now, mercury will be the airline fuel. And it's there in the Vimana Shastra, which must be at least 2000 years old. Nobody has done original research on that. And finally, I would say, unless we make Sanskrit compulsory in India, you will never get the transformation that you are looking for through these kinds of seminars. Everybody must learn. And there's mythology that it is a dead language, there's mythology that it's a tough language. I've seen the Sanskriti Bharati is able to make people converse in Sanskrit in 10 days. And just 3 months is all that you need to become proficient in Sanskrit. Of course, if we try to do it now, they will say we are intolerant. But that doesn't matter. It's only a matter of time. Because Sanskrit is now being discovered as the language of the future in computer, particularly artificial intelligence. And you have some of these people, they are not sporadic. You have a school in Britain called St. John's School where they teach Sanskrit because the vibrations it produces by uttering Sanskrit words develops your brain. Sanskrit is now taught in Germany in a big way. It's increasing. It's become a craze. I suppose it becomes a fashion in Europe, then we will also very readily accept Sanskrit. But Sanskrit is something that we had to do. I was seeing a judgment of the Supreme Court by Justice Ganguly. It was actually a very ordinary looking title, UP Trading Corporation or something like that versus somebody. And there he expounds something I had never thought. Having studied so much law, I have never come across this. I think this is another new subject for Rajiv Malhotra, taking the battle of Sanskrit one to the next volume. And there, Justice Ganguly in the Supreme Court in the judgment describes Jaimini's sutras. And he says that the Mimamsa principles of logic is superior to the school of logic that we use in our course today, and that is the Matthew school of logic. And consequently, he said that in the long run we should replace the Mimamsa school of logic in our court system because it's much more, it's multidimensional as opposed to a unidimensional approach of the Western school of logic for legal purposes. So you go on discovering more and more things that you have mastered. And so what we are now working towards is what I call as a renaissance. We have to create a new Indian. If you don't like the word Hindustani or Hindu, the word Indian, even today China in all its official publications describe India as Indugo, which means Hindu Rashtra. And I asked my communist friends, how come you don't find that communal? Should condemn the Chinese for being communal. But the fact is that whatever is the word you use, ultimately it has to be Hindustan, where you incorporate those who also accept that they are citizens of this earth and create a new revolution is a strong word, but certainly a mind change. The mindset is ultimately the clue. You can be a strong lion that can tear anybody into pieces, but you can witness in a circus 5 strong lions obeying a thin ringmaster. This is what explained to me why we had a prime minister who was afraid of a foreign woman, even though he was a prime minister, because of this mindset. If you've been brought up to obey, you will obey. No matter what your strength, you will not know your strength. So this mindset revolution is what this Swadeshi Indology is all about. And I very much congratulate the center. Ram Bahadur Rai, I have not seen here. He's a late riser, I think. That's why he's not here. Probably be there in the afternoon. He's a great revolutionary. He was the right. Jayaprakash Narayan used to say, he is my right hand. Govindacharya was my left hand. He said, Ram Bahadur Rai is my right hand. So the great organizers of the JP movement and a genuine revolutionary, not one of these bogus ones, and 100% Swadeshi. He's been made the chairman. I'm so pleased when I heard that at that time. And I think now we should become a nucleus, a critical mass to challenge all the so-called conventional versions of our history and present to the world a new documented, researched history of the true history of India. Thank you very much.
Dr. Malhotra as well as Vijaya called me to say that we are having the conference at Indira Gandhi National Center. I was surprised. What has happened? Are you sure? Are you clear about the? Because suddenly the city of Samadhis is changing. I call Delhi as a city of crematoriums, actually. Starting with almost everybody is here, I think, right? Except unfortunately that grand old man Narasimha Rao didn't have the privilege of having it here. Otherwise, I think, anyhow, it's a very good change that we could have this function here. As Dr. Swami mentioned, we can call it as simply a National Center of Arts. That would be a very good name for the future. And we have two Swamis here actually, Nagaswami and Subramaniam Swami. And I am sure both of them would facilitate the future process. Yes. Than Subramaniam. Yeah, I am of course, one of the point I was talking with Rajiv Malhotra was, I am a student of Sanskrit. I studied up to my BSc. In those days, we used to have what is known as English and one more language. So, from school, I did that. In the graduate level, we found, there is a standard question which is expected, which we have to answer. The lack of history in Sanskrit literature. So, that's a leaked out question. Everybody knows that question will come and we have to mug it up for it. Why there is no sense of history in Sanskrit literature. So, I was also wondering actually, we have to write about Kalhada's Rajataragini and Bhattamana's work, which contains some amount of Kadambari, some amount of, it is not full history, but Kalhada's is the only. So, I used to be wondering why, first wondering about the exam question, but why there is no sense of history. My grandfather was a Mahomogapadhyaya. He was a Congress freedom fighter, Congress of those days, not the contemporary Congress. He was a very serious person. So, he told me it could be one possible reason he was telling. See, history always creates a sense of vengeance. And Baltic countries, he has travelled widely. Baltic countries he used to show as an example, where 18 generations people used to have records and fight with each other. For 18 generation before my great grandfather, your person was fighting. So, I will finish you off. This is the thing. So, he told that could be one possible reason, because history always generates heat and a sense of vengeance. You tend to fight. That could be one possible. He was not telling a definitive thing. But it had in its own womb the problem. What was the problem? The problem was created by the communists much later in terms of creating uncertainty. For instance, when I was a student, everything was under dispute. Date of Shankaracharya, big dispute, one essay. It could vary from 4th century BC to 12th century AD. Date of Kalidasa, dispute. All are under disputes. And the disputes were very fascinatingly settled by whites. All my references in my Sanskrit when I studied, Davis says this, William says this, nothing is told by any Mahomadhyas or nothing is. So, they will have to settle the issue. And so, this lack of anchoring of the society. So, we were not anchored, so it is the question of destabilization, which is one of the fundamental principles of left ideology. For instance, St. Petersburg, some of you may know, it has undergone so many changes, it is weeping actually. What is my name? Suddenly it was called Leningrad, suddenly it was again called St. Petersburg, again it was changed. Because if you root it, if you anchor it to a particular situation, then it becomes assertive. And leftists are very uncomfortable with that. So, they go on revising, they go on changing the idea of history, because they don't want you to have a very proper anchored past. That was one of the major regions or major reasons. So, that we have fallen into that thing. So, we have So, by and large, we have to rely on oral history, and there is, according to me, there is nothing wrong. Actually, oral history is sometimes I feel is more reliable than what is pushed under our throat as written history. A lot of oral history comes out of beliefs, systems, and from one generation to another generation. So, we might have had a good sense in terms of not having a recorded theory of vengeance, but at the same time it has impacted on the other way. So, the civilization did not understand that it is possible for certain other faith to kill you for not believing in those faiths. This is one of the major fascinating thing about the Indian tradition. Indians could never understand that somebody could come and kill you for not believing in that system of faith. This is something which, because we had always debates, and we have Adi Shankara and Vandana Mishra debate. We have another fascinating debate in my own home state. There is one group of what are called Vaishnavites, who have a particular the U type of namam they have, and other group has got the sharp edge. There is a temple elephant. How it should be, this namam should be put. Believe me, sir, 320 years this dispute is going on, not 1 or 2 years. Debate, discussion, method, and various things. It went up to Privy Council, and one white man gave some judgment like Arvind Kejriwal, odd and even days. He told odd days you put this U, even days you put the sharp edge. But that also did not settle it, because one group told, which is the first starting point. So when to start it, it's going on. So one of my colleague was telling about it and laughing. I told, don't laugh about it. It's a very fascinating thing. It never ever came to a situation, or in the 270 years, that one group had a belt bomb and went and killed the other group. It did not happen. One group didn't behead the other group, that I'll chop off your head. As my Malaysian professor friend always say, you are talking about freedom of expression. We are more worried about freedom after expression. So this is the, this never happened. It's only debate and discussion. It's a very interesting thing. That is the fundamental way in which we try to sort out. It's not sorted out in 5 years or 10 years. It could be sorted out over longer period of time also. So we as a civilization never ever understood that some other groups can come and kill you actually for not accepting that belief system, or because we always thought it is meant to be debated, meant to be discussed. And the third area is the area of economics. We again we have to go back to the roots. Now we are finding that a lot of calculus and geometry is actually, a lot of it was available in the state of Kerala as early as 14th and 15th century. What are being now talked about, another thing. So there is a huge recognition about Kerala School of Mathematics actually, which is not very well known, another thing. Similar way, we had a significant amount of economic principles, and which is rooted to our culture and our tradition. Now today, last month, the World Bank is talking about one size doesn't fit all. This they have come to know after thorough research for 35 years, spending huge amount of money, and they could have asked me, at a very, very, what one can call low cost, I would say, I would have provided the answer to them. One size doesn't definitely fit all. Now they are telling that each country, each culture has to have its own way of tackling its issues. And like ours, for instance, is much more a relationship-based society. We are not so much rule-based type of a society. So we have to have all our own mechanisms. I was talking with Rajiv ji, and he was telling that's a very, very interesting area where we should look back and see what type of, because we have been last 60, 70 years at least, depending upon what you may loosely call imported experts, all coming from various parts, and particularly when it is winter in Boston and other places, they come here. And India International Center, everywhere they go around selling the same thing from 1955. They should change sometime the record. Same thing they say, poverty should be alleviated and people should be helped sometime here, sometime in Amsterdam, sometime in New York. Our poverty is one of the major, huge big business in India is that thing. And then they visit and so these imported experts, unfortunately we don't use experts like Swami, who is also imported, but who is a different type of other crisis, right? Correct? And sometimes we also have these export rejects also. That also is floating around. Delhi is full of them actually. Everybody who is, and even if you are from any, Long Island or Tall Mountain University, you are treated, you are a very great fellow. And then you are fettered. And he mouths the same thing. Nothing is different actually. But now they are telling one size doesn't fit all. They have suddenly realized. And because of the girth of the people or obesity or whatever, I do not know, the crisis in the Europe and the US, obesity is one of the major crises. Suddenly they are finding 60% of the US people are obese. I thought there is no need for a massive research for it. You walk around places and, because next to me if somebody is in the airline sitting, I know that, it's a big problem actually. So extended belt is 2/3 of the US flights carry extended belt. So you don't have to do any big research. Anyhow, they have found out. That could be one reason why they are telling one size doesn't fit all. I think I am very glad about it. And the only thing is, I think in the next maybe 5 to 10 years, we have to evolve our methods of doing things in the sphere of economics, in the sphere of finance, based upon our own backgrounds, our own requirement, our own culture. It's a very, very important thing, because fundamental principle is very simple. In India, the society is organized, the government is disorganized. Ravi Shankar Prasad is not here, it doesn't matter. The society is organized, take my word for it, government is extremely disorganized. In Europe and US, to a large extent, society is very, very disorganized. Government is much organized. So they depend upon government significantly there. Here it is the other way. That is the reason why, this demonetization, this, that, and so people smile and take it at, they know how to deal with it both at the individual level as well as at the collective level. Government will do many things, let them do it. It doesn't really, as long as it doesn't affect us, right? They will introduce rules, regulations, and other things, right? So sooner we evolve mechanisms, that is the one important thing. Second important thing I feel is, this is my, what one can call, you may call it as a Cassandra type of a thing. Academicians are famous for these things. 3 to 5 years, I think I expect a civil war to break out in Europe. It's going to be a huge problem, not only for Europe, for all over the world. And all conflicts in the last 1,000 years are only European conflict. And they became global conflict. Second World War was essentially Britain was fighting Germany, and the Indians were getting killed in Singapore and Sudan, and because it became world, everything became world, and we also jump into that because we are part of the world. We are globalized. So I think we must seriously, very seriously think of what India, how it's going to react to the arising, what I call the spectre of war is on Europe. And we will be forced, arm twisted, to send our soldiers there, because we are supposed to be, what is that called? The largest peacekeeping people in the world. So we send all our people all over the world actually. I think you know that in the United Nations, the largest force is from India actually. So we will be arm twisted, and we have to, we have to deal with it in the most appropriate fashion, which will benefit us. That is what is very important, based upon again our own past roots, history, and how we are planning to save ourselves. The last point is the Swadeshi people are telling in terms of an alternate. It is, according to me, the time we stop talking about alternate. It is not an alternate mechanism. Yoga is not an alternate way of treating people. Ayurveda is not an alternate way of. All of them are to be main and the only route, first route. The all others should be alternates. This is what I feel we should be stressing. So Swadeshi is no more an alternate or anything. It is the main thing, and whoever wants to talk about other things will be the alternate. So that would happen. And as Dr. Swami was nicely mentioning, this will move to there. All our ideas regarding some of these local culture, local thing, and it will again come back to us. That's very important. It is who tells is much more important, because a plumber from New York any day will be listened to more carefully in Delhi on economics than a professor from IIM. I can assure you on that. Then at the end of the talk they will say he is a plumber. It doesn't matter, sir, he is a white fellow, he is talking, and he will say economics is important, India is important, and US is important, and all people will be nodding their head. So who tells is also equally critical, and that situation we have to change. We have to change it, make it mainstream, make it that it is the one on which the pillars have to be built, and it is the one on which we are very proud about. The last point is, last week one German professor was talking to me. He was very, he was telling how globalized they are, and he told there are people with 2 languages, 3 languages in his class, German, French, and Romanian. I was just looking at him, you come to my class, sir, there are people with 12 languages, people who speak 12 languages, and most of them do not know each other's language, and people who have got 10 eating habits, and 6 times method of dressing. And we are much more globalized. People don't realize India is the most globalized country in the world. Within India, we are enormously globalized with extraordinary amount of acceptance. Kindly note, we don't use the word tolerance. Tolerance is the word used by Europeans. They tolerate each other. That means what? It's like living in apartment, living apart from each other. That type of a tolerance. Tolerance is different than acceptance. In our case, we accept. As long as you don't try to force yourself on me. That is the issue. The civilizations and cult and cultures which force themselves on others, and that also we wanted to accept. But they were not enthusiastic in accepting. They were enthusiastic in beheading, or they were enthusiastic in converting. So that is the fundamental thing. So I told the German professor, we are much more globalist from that point of view. We have a huge number of languages, huge number of ways of looking at things, cuisine, eating habits, dressing habits, and all these things. So it's not just you are only, and he was very uncomfortable being globalist in European situation. I jokingly told him, don't worry about it, you will fight a war and then you have to, one way or other, decide about it. In our case, we are comfortable with our concept of globalization of acceptance. So that is what you may call the Weltanschauung, or the world view of us, and that would carry us significantly forward. This initiative of Rajiv ji is extraordinarily important in a historical context, the context in which we are, we are evolving, or we are moving out. I am really thankful to Dr. Swami for providing the primary address in terms of suggesting the ways in which we could rejuvenate, or we could further the cause. And thank you all for your patience here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a soldier, I'd like to give it a slightly militaristic perspective, because Samuel Huntington started the clash of civilizations. So taking up on that genre, I would like to emphatically state that no other country in the world has the idea of itself so comprehensively attacked and virtually destroyed as the Indian civilization was. The fact of the matter is, the last almost about 300 years of colonization, one of the landmarks that happens is the first war of independence, 1857, when the people of India, fed up with that assault on their culture, with that assault on their dignity, revolted against the British East India Company. And after that rebellion was very cruelly suppressed. Outside every village, there were, bodies hung by their necks. That is the summary justice that the British had done. And at the end of it, they decided that they would ensure that India and Indians would never come together to fight or rise against the British Empire. And to that extent, they began a very thorough and systematic study of our society. They are good anthropologists. They identified every single fault line that they could in the Indian body politic. And one of the first that they identified was caste. Every collectorate, every commissionerate that you had to go and register your gotra, your caste, your jati and everything. All that possibly we were forgetting as you industrialize, as you urbanize. Caste and these categories start falling by the wayside. They belong to largely an agricultural era. They revived caste with a vengeance. In 1872, Sir John Risley held the first caste-based census. And John Risley famously wrote, as long as there is caste, there will be no India. As long as there is caste, there will be no India. They have used it to thoroughly divide our society. And then they went on, of course, next to religion, to creed, and they gave a separate electorate to the Muslims. We have had, terrorist problems in Jammu and Kashmir. They gave separate electorate to the Sikhs. We had problem in Punjab. They gave separate electorate to the Christians. We've had problem in the Northeast. And then they gave, of course, separate electorate to the scheduled caste and tribes. They identified every single fault line and they tried their level best to see that the idea of India as such is destroyed. And Churchill famously said, India as the basis of a nation state, the equator, how can the equator be the basis of a nation state? It has got as much, credibility as the idea of the equator as the basis of a nation state. He scoffed at us. Well, today we are a nation state. And we have always been. If somebody thinks that nationhood is the gift of the British, please read the Atharva Veda. It talks of the Rashtra. The Atharva Veda talks of the Rashtra. So what are you talking about, this gift of democracy, this gift of nationhood from the British? They did everything they could to destroy your identity, your self-identity. And number two, apart from destroying your identity, give you a congenital feeling of inferiority. The pity is, for 70 years after the British have left, we are still not overthrown the shackles of our psychological slavery. You are still psychological slaves of the British. You still look towards the West for endorsement. You still look towards the West for validation. And a thing becomes right only if the West says it is so. You have that congenital sense of inferiority which was deeply, deeply instilled into you. And it is this that we have to fight. And it is this that I would like to compliment Rajiv Malhotra for the excellent, this is a project to regain our national self-respect. It is a project to regain our destroyed sense of self-respect. Everything desi is inferior. Everything vilayati, is superior. That is the mindset that is deeply, deeply ingrained into you. If I can talk to you in English, well, I am a superior country gentleman. But if I talk in Hindi or in Tamil or some other of our local languages, isko pata nahi hai. So that is the problem. We must understand the assault that was made upon our cultural integrity, upon our idea of the self. It is this lost sense of the self that we have to recover. As an ancient civilization, carbon dated to 7,000 years, empirically, carbon dated to 7,000 years. Our problem has been this destruction of our very idea of the self. I've been doing some research on this particular topic, and when I was in the army, my subject was information warfare. It is now a war that you have to fight, the battle of perceptions, battles to shape the ideas of who we are, What is our identity? हमारा वजूद क्या है? हम कौन हैं? If that you can assault, I mean, that is the first thing that you have demolished. And in this, battle of the self, we've all heard of the famous, Dr. Wendy Doniger. What exactly, how you pronounce that ridiculous name? But, in 1958, the Americans passed the National Defense Education Act. As a part of this act, there were a number of institutions set up to carry out intelligence activity, perception management activities. One of these established in India was the American Institution of Indian Studies, right? And may I remind you that as far back as the Second World War, the University of Pennsylvania had helped to establish this, institutions of scholarship to study India, to serve the military during the Second World War. Most of the American programs to studying India grew out of the intelligence and military departments which sought, please listen to this carefully, which sought to shape opinions in other countries through the media and the academia. They sought to influence opinions in other countries through the media and through the academia. Media we know very well of, and we know the whole of British India was conquered by Indian foot soldiers of the empire who fought for the British. There were only about 20 to 40,000 British soldiers, and the number of Indian soldiers was 1 to 2 lakhs at any given point of time. It is the Indian soldiers who conquered India for the British, their foot soldiers. And now we have the academic and the media foot soldiers of the empire shaping our opinions, telling us how low down, what a low form of life you are compared to the West, and giving you that congenital sense of inferiority. Everything seems to be wrong with us. Wendy Doniger's father was Lister Doniger. He was a CIA operative. This lady herself was a part of the CIA, and when she was studying, she was a professor at the University of Chicago, her guide in the University of Daniel Ingalls. He was a known intelligence operative. When she went to Oxford, she worked under R.C. Zehner, another known intelligence operative. All right? And in 1963-64, Wendy Doniger was sent to India as part of this American Institution of Indian Studies, and we know the kind of work she has done. She is today an intelligence operative, is regarded as the last word and authority on India. I find it very difficult to get a book published by Penguins, but Penguins will bend over backwards to produce Hinduism by Wendy Doniger, and she started off quite well. If you read her initial books on the Vedas, one thought they were decent, and then slowly the agenda starts coming out. Attract an audience, win an audience, influence an audience, tell you about what you are. I think it's about time to rescue Indology from the clutches of these Western spin masters, to give a spin to the news, spin doctoring the news, spin doctoring the content of the media. This is an ongoing war. There are full-time officers, staffs sitting and working on these particular, strategies, information warfare strategies, how to strike at the root of your idea of the self, how to make you feel low down, how do you make you think, oh, the Americans are up there and we are down here. We had Oxford and Cambridge as our meccas. Now we want to go to Harvard. We want to go to, any other university, Massachusetts or Caltech. That is the new meccas that are now emerging. So it is this mindset of inferiority that we have to assault. And one of the first things I have requested, Rajiv ji, is, our entire history was crafted for us, by Mortimer, Wheeler and the rest of them, the British archaeologists, etc. over here. And the source river of our country is supposed to be the Indus. The word India comes from Indus. Hindu comes from Sindhu. Even the Arabs got it wrong. But that is not our cradle river. The cradle river is the Saraswati that once flowed from the Mansarovar lake down to the Arabian Sea. और उसका पाठ 6 से 8 किलोमीटर चौड़ा था. 6 से 8 किलोमीटर चौड़ा पाठ उस नदी का. And people, every time we went to the Sangam, we were told, यहाँ से आप गंगा जमुना मिलती है और सरस्वती अदृश्य हो गई है. We thought it was a story. We thought it was a myth. Till the ISRO people showed me these satellite images of that mighty river on which, we were supposed to be living. I am supposed to be a Brahmin and we are supposed to be Saraswat Brahmin. So I used to wonder what is the Saraswat about? It is the Saraswati. It is the Saraswati river that, along the banks of which we were dwelling. And the 60% of the Indus Valley sites have not been found along the Indus tract. They have been found along the Saraswati. So that tells you which is your cradle, your core, your mother civilization. And I think the first thing that you have to go back is correct that idea. The British had told us that the hordes of Aryan on horseback, they came and they destroyed the real Indus Valley civilization. Those real civilized people, barbarians came from outside, destroyed 100 fort cities of Shambhara, etc., etc. The whole twist given to your history, whereas the fact that now emerges is there are only about 60 or 70 odd skeletons, which even marks which could have happened with metal or metallic objects. So 70 is not a genocide. 70 is not the murder of a whole civilization and its transplantation, uprooting. I'm sorry, we've got it very badly wrong. 2900 BC, there was a massive earthquake. The Satluj, which used to join the Saraswati, the Yamuna, which used to join the Saraswati, they both changed course. Yamuna was captured by the Indo-Gangetic system, by the Ganga, and of course that joined this thing. So in about 100 years plus, this river dried out. String of pools, part of it, Paleo Channel, has gone underground, right? The fact of the matter is that led to the first, there is otherwise no reason. I'll just take a minute more. There is otherwise no reason for any migration from India, the warm, nice, lush, fertile plains of India towards Central Asia and towards beyond, right? All invasions have come from west to east. But when a catastrophe like this takes place and an entire river goes out, a civilization based on a river, it becomes extinct, what do you think will happen? People will move two ways. Bulk of the people moved towards the Indo-Gangetic plains, but a large number of them moved out towards Central Asia, towards the Middle East. And you have those treaties, within the Hittites and the others, which talk of the Vedic gods as witness. So you have moved out like this. Your entire history is that you came from outside, you were invaders too, like the British were invaders. So what's so different? We are all looters of a kind. This is the first twist to wrench your mind. First wrench is to twist your mind. The first wrench is to capture your history, to be the sole authoritative people for your history. And now we have the foot soldiers or Romila Thapar. And you dare talk to her about migration from the east to the west. And she will look at you with scorn. She had come to give a talk at the National Defense College. So we just were discussing with her. And then I showed her the book on the Mahabharata, and she shrank from it as if it was something contagious. But we have allowed these people to purloin our history, to establish themselves as the Zarinas of our culture, of our history. And this place was, who was running this particular orchestra here for so much time. I'm glad it has been rescued, as a lot of our history needs to be rescued. And I compliment Rajiv ji for this very, very, very wonderful initiative of restoring our history, restoring our sense of self and our identity. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Subramaniam Swamiji, Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji, Major General Bakshi, Professor Vaidyanathan, Professor Nagaswamy, and distinguished audience. I am here to thank you all. I am really happy that Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts is being able to conduct this wonderful event here. And I would very briefly like to tell you about the efforts which our institution is doing for promoting the Indian ethos of Indology. On the initiation of our Honorable President Sri Ram Bahadur Rai, we started a Bharat Vidya Prayojana just to promote the Indian ethos and Indological thoughts from Indian perspective. As General Bakshi rightly said, that this is a war, and this is an intellectual war which should be fought with the soldiers, with the army. So we have to create an intellectual army amongst us. So our effort is to create an intellectual army, people, young scholars who think about India from the Indian perspective and who are being trained and told about Indian perspectives of Indology. In fact, the total discourse of Indology has been, as we all know, has been West-oriented, particularly Europe-dominated. So now it is high time that we think about Indology from Indian perspective. That is why we have given the project the name as Bharat Vidya Prayojana and nothing else. We have already started our process. On 5th of October, we conducted the first lecture in this series by Sri Ravindra Sharma Guruji from Adilabad. We all know he is a scholar, veteran scholar. And after that, we had a lecture of Rajiv Malhotra ji on the 20th of November. We are also organizing conferences. This is the first conference in this regard. Others too are supposed to be followed in coming days. We are also conducting workshops for the young scholars, in which we would request scholars like Rajiv Malhotra ji and Professor Nagaswamy ji, where the young scholars would be interacting with these veteran thinkers for substantial days, and they would resolve their queries, and there would be an open discourse where all these questions would be resolved, so that they don't have any botherations in their mind about the concept. We have also started working on various critical editions, and we have requested the honorable scholars to do these editions, but also train one of the younger scholars along with them. Like one experiment which we are doing with Abhinav Bharti, where we have requested 10 scholars to take up this critical edition. This is for the first time which we are doing. 15 khand have been taken up for the critical editions, and where we have requested them to take a young scholar as an intern, so that they are also trained in developing this critical edition. So these are our efforts. But other than that, we are also starting a series called Bharat Vichar Pravah, which would be taken up to various academic institutions, especially universities and colleges, where we would be talking to the students, and we would be requesting scholars like you to go to various universities and discuss and deliberate, so that this thought is disseminated to various institutions and younger generations. And we are also planning to start a series like the one which we see, TED series or Bharat Vichar Pravah series, so that it is also telecasted on various channels and YouTubes, so that this thing is disseminated properly. Other than that, we are also trying to bring out a publication named as Bharat Bodh publication, which would give the idea of Indian ethos of this entire discourse. So this is in very brief which we are trying to do as an academic institution at the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. And I am really thankful to Rajiv Malhotra ji and Infinity Foundation for choosing the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts for conducting this wonderful conference. You would be here for the next 3 days, and we hope to make your stay as comfortable as possible. But we have our limitations, so please bear with us with all the inconvenience which you may face during the course of the day. The session is very tight. It is a tightrope walk which has been designed by Vijaya Vishwanathan. So we have to walk on that tightrope on all 3 days. But there is a very interesting session of Vakyarth Sadas in the evening where we have the Shastrarth in the traditional way. So that should be an interesting session also. At the end, I would just like to say that we have answer to every sensible thing in the world, but we do not have and should not have answer to any nonsense in the world. So that should be our motto. And since we are gathered here for a very wonderful cause, I just pray Sangachadvam Sambadaddham Samvo Manachi Dhanatam Deva Bhagam Yatha Purve Sajjananam Upasate. Thank you very much.